Good evening. You're watching The Digital Age. We've got a great show for you tonight. It involves Jeb Bush. You remember Jeb Bush? He was the governor of Florida until he was succeeded by the present governor of Florida. Jeb Bush tried to fix the hanging Chad problem. Remember the hanging Chad problem? By getting new touch screen voting machines. He thought he'd done the right thing, but lo and behold, when the new governor came in, who by the way was also a Republican, he replaced them. Does this make any sense to you? Did Jeb Bush have it wrong? Why can't we build a voting machine if we can send a man to the moon? Those are the questions for tonight, and our guest is Larry Norden, who's of the Brennan Center. He counsel at the Brennan Center, I should say. He's the project director of a report called Machinery of Democracy. He is a prominent figure in the techniques of voting machines and has been consulting with the New York State Legislature to help them figure out what they're going to do. And welcome to the program, Larry.
Thanks so much, Jim.
All right, let's just trace this Jeb Bush stuff. I mean, what in fact happened? Jeb Bush went and bought a touchscreen machines. Is that right?
Yeah,
but what were the characteristics of these machines?
Well, and I think you're right in framing it in the context of a 2000 election.
Yeah.
The 2000 election revealed a lot of problems that existed with the voting systems that we had in the country, and in particular, the punch card systems that they were using in Florida, hanging chads. There were all kinds of other problems that people may not remember, having voters filling out the spot for Gore and then writing in Gore and not having their votes counted because they had voted twice, the butterfly ballots. There were all sorts of problems that were revealed in that election. And the idea was, and I think to some extent it was correct, electronic voting, touchscreen machines allow the voter to press onto the screen directly, just like they might on an ATM machine,
right.
And make their selection. And a computer then tallies their vote. And that's essentially what it is. Anybody who's used an ATM machine or a movie kiosk or purchased tickets for an airplane when they go to the airport has a general idea of what the system looks like.
So it's not rocket science, because even I figured out how to use the touch screen to buy an airplane ticket the other day when I went to the airport, and even I can use, and everyone else uses, an ATM machine. So it's not technology that just knocks your sock off in terms of walking into the voting booth. The problem with it, as I understood, though, is that it had no paper trail.
Right. That's exactly right. And you know, there's a very big difference between, there are lots of differences between voting and going to withdraw money from an ATM machine, but one of the biggest is when you vote, there's no way of checking that your vote was recorded accurately. You can't, unlike when you withdraw money from an ATM machine, you can't go and check your bank account later and make sure that the bank didn't say you withdrew $300 when you only withdrew $100. When you vote, you can't go and see, okay, I voted for Kerry or I voted for Bush. Did my vote actually get counted? So you're completely reliant on what's inside that black box in the machine. And a lot of computer scientists, they were the first ones who raised this issue and raised the alarm on it, said that's a problem. If there's no independent way for the voter to verify that their vote was voted correctly, and a lot of them suggested some kind of paper record to look at, then we can't actually know that votes were recorded accurately.
Well, apparently touchscreens had some other problems too, just in the way you use them. And I've got a video clip here that relates to Bush's touchscreen systems in Florida, which makes a lot of fun of George Bush. But I think when you look at the clip, it also makes fun of touchscreen systems with or without a paper trail. Let's take a look at it.
Okay, where's my guy? Yep, there we go. Okay, John Kerry. Hello, John Kerry. John Kerry? Maybe next? Are you sure? Yes. Yes. Yes, I'm really, really sure. You don't want to not vote for John Kerry? No. All right, John Kerry. Oh, come on. John Kerry. Okay, maybe I want to vote for George Bush. John Kerry! Ah, come here. Come here. Come here! Come here, you little John Kerry. John effing Kerry! What? No!
I really think that's pretty amusing. So apparently the touchscreens have their own problems, and indeed in the last congressional election in Florida, there was an 18,000 votes were lost using the touchscreen system, which really...
This was in the race to replace Katherine Harris
in
Florida.
Katherine Harris, who was famous for the hanging chads to begin with.
Right.
Right. And the lost votes didn't have anything to do directly with the fact you didn't have a receipt. They were just lost. Is there something wrong with the touchscreen systems, for just forgetting the fact that you don't have a receipt?
Well, there are all kinds of problems. First of all, I think the most basic thing is we don't spend enough money on our elections. And we have gone through a very fast and massive change in the United States in the way we vote, historically unprecedented. 6 years ago, basically everybody was voting on one of a few systems, lever machines, punch card ballots, filling out ballots by hand. And we've moved almost entirely in the country, with the exception of one or two states like New York, to electronic voting. In those 6 years, we spent less money than we spent in a single year maintaining ATM machines.
Well, how much money would that have been?
We spent...
That's 50, you say that's like 48 states then, right?
48 states,
and they all
maybe
bought
49 at this point.
49, they most of them bought touchscreens, is that right?
About half bought touchscreens and about half bought what are called optical scan machines.
Right.
Those are electronic as well. What you do with an optical scan is you fill out the ballot like you would an SAT exam. Right. Usually. They're little ovals. You fill it out for the candidate, and then it's scanned in, and there's a computer essentially that reads that ballot.
Okay, so let me make that clear, because that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. We have the touch screen, which is what you do at the airport, what you do to get your cash out. We all know what that is. Okay. Some of us, including me, don't know how the optical scanner system. So just to repeat back to you what you told me, it's like filling out, you say, an SAT. You take a pencil and you fill in the right box, and then you walk over to the optical scan machine. The optical scan machine scans it and then records the vote. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what's left? Oh, what's left is the ticket that you put in. So
yeah, and that goes into a ballot box.
Okay. Well, back where you were, we spent very little money changing the old system, and it was about half touchscreen, and it was about half what I just described to call the SAT system.
That's right. That's right. And electronic machines require, if they're going to work, they require a lot of maintenance. We spend in the United States on ATM machines about $4 billion a year maintaining them. We don't spend anything close. We don't spend anything close to that. Yeah.
ATMs. I find that a very disappointing statistic.
Well, yeah, they make a lot of money on the ATMs as well, of course.
But you got a $4 billion cost against. Well, anyway. So, and how much were we spending on these 48 states or wherever?
Over the course of the 6 years, we essentially spent about $3 million to make $3 billion to make this transformation. To make the transformation.
Yeah. All right. Now, but we made the transformation according to that video and according to the successor to Jeb Bush. We made the transition the wrong way.
Yeah, I think the issue is that, again, going back to 2000, we saw the problems in 2000, and we decided that we needed to address them through technology. Technology is never going to be the solution for everything. It may solve some problems, and it creates new ones.
We realize what you're saying. This is the digital age.
Yeah.
The digital age program, all problems can be solved by digitalization.
But I think that any scientist would agree.
Scientists. We don't like scientists on the program. That's a turnoff. But anyway.
So the electronic machines did address the hanging chad problem, and the fact of the matter is...
Well, when you say electronic machines, you mean touchscreen?
I mean both touchscreen machines and the scanner, the optical scan, where you're filling out by paper. What they did was they got rid of this problem that you had in the past, where people maybe undervoted, they missed a race and they didn't know it. Maybe they accidentally voted for two races.
Just tell, excuse me for interrupting, but just tell us what an undervote is.
Well, an undervote, hanging chad is a good example of an undervote, right? The voter may have thought that they stuck the stylus into the ballot.
You're there, but it doesn't record
and it counted, but it isn't recorded.
So you walk in and out, but your vote isn't there. Okay, so back.
And so in fact, the number, these undervotes, these missing votes, were quite high with a lot of the previous systems. Actually, any system that you're talking about, even the lever machines to a certain extent, when you start moving down.
Okay, now lever machine is what we use in New York. You walk into the booth and you push the lever over, right?
That's right. Yeah, okay. That's right. For the most part, on the DREs, certainly where you get one race at a time.
That's a touch screen.
I'm sorry, yeah, on the touch screens where you get one race at a time, or on the optical scan where you're filling out the ballot, the machine gives you feedback and it says you missed a race, or you overvoted on your race. You voted for two candidates instead of one, and the voter then gets to correct it. It gives you feedback, and that has made a huge difference.
But what happened to the 18,000 votes in Florida? 18,000 votes. That's a lot of votes.
It's a lot of votes, and this is a big problem with electronic voting. Well, I think one of two things.
Touchscreen, particularly because it was a touchscreen machine, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think one of two things happened, and part of the problem is we'll never know what happened because there was no paper record, and this is what the computer scientists have been complaining about.
I can't believe we'll never know. You miss 18,000 votes. They can't go back in there and check those machines why they weren't working. They could go back and check an ATM machine why it wasn't working.
Well, you can't necessarily find out why it was working, and I mean this is one of the things that we get to in our report. Certainly. Certainly, if there's, and I don't mean to suggest that there was a deliberate attempt to change votes in Florida in this election, but if there is, and we detail this in the report, which by the way, we're going to be releasing in the form of a book that should be a little bit more public friendly, general public friendly.
Hey, that's a plug for a book we don't have. Ordinarily, we show up the book, but we don't have it. I found a book with New York reports sort of public friendly.
What's that?
Sort of. I thought
the report is. It's going to be more public friendly.
Semi-public friendly.
More general public and less for computer scientists. But what we showed in that report is that if somebody wants to hide the fact that they've changed votes on these electronic machines, it's very easy, and it's going to be extremely difficult for somebody to go back and figure out what happened if there's no paper record. What happened in Florida? There are two theories. One is that, there are probably more than two theories, but there are two main theories. One is that there was a bad ballot design. And we have found this, if on electronic machines, and when I say that I mean the touchscreen machines, if there's a bad design, it's very easy to lose a lot of votes. People generally aren't that familiar with computers. Particularly, we found this particularly impacts on low-income voters that have less experience with computers. When you have a very confusing design on a computer screen, a lot more votes get lost.
That's outrageous that we have a bad design on computer screens after we've gone through the whole business of the hanging chad, which was, and the butterfly ballot. Butterfly ballot was a bad design. How can possibly, in this age where we're doing millions and billions of dollars by touchscreen and flying zillions of flights by touchscreen, all of which depend on a good design, end up with a bad design? I mean, the bad design is just the way you touch the screen.
Yeah, it really is astounding, and I think there need to be national standards on design for touchscreen machines. And I'll tell you what the problem was on the. I don't know that it was the cause of all of the problem in Florida in these 18,000 lost votes, but it's a very basic problem. And we pointed this out as a very basic problem before it happened because everybody knew it was a basic problem. When you go to an ATM machine or you go to a kiosk at a movie to buy a ticket, it gives you one question at a time. It doesn't ask you how much money you want to withdraw and what your code is and which account you want to withdraw from.
Understand.
What they did in Florida is on this congressional race, they listed the congressional race kind of in the top, and right underneath it they had another race that was highlighted in bold.
How does that happen? I mean, as you say, we go to the bank, we do one transaction at a time. We go to the airport, we buy our ticket, da-da-da-da, then we check our luggage, da-da-da. So, you know, for simple-minded people like that, 1, 2. Now, with that experience, how does someone design a system that doesn't follow the analogy?
I think the problem that we have is, I mean, and this was, in fact, I think a big part of the problem in moving from older systems to electronic systems, is that we leave almost all of the decisions in the hands of election officials who are already overburdened with everything else that they have to do. They have to register voters, they have to run an election, and that's their primary responsibilities. We invest no money in setting out guidance for what ballots should look like. We don't have the people that really know basic design principles designing the ballots. We end up with lots of errors.
Let me see if I can understand what you're telling me, because when I go to register here in New York, not register, I sign in. I want to be polite to the people who sign me in, but it takes longer than it should. People can't find the signatures. And are these the same people that are deciding whether the touchscreen has the right program on it?
Well, it's probably the chief election official, but again,
who are the chief election officials?
It depends on the state. They're sometimes elected, they're sometimes appointed, but I can tell you that the chances that they're a computer scientist, the chances that they have a lot of previous design experiences are pretty slim. That's not why they were elected.
Yeah, so that's the same problem as the butterfly ballot, because we didn't have any.
That's exactly right.
So we changed the butterfly ballot, in a sense, badly designed, and replace it with a badly designed electronic system. I mean, this is absolutely nuts.
I don't think that they have to be. I don't think they have to be badly designed.
Yeah, but what's the solution to this? Because if the election officials who deal with this sort of thing or don't have the time for it, don't have the expertise, what do you do? For example, New York State now has a chance to do it right based on the experience of those who've done it wrong. They can look at what happened in Florida, for example, and as they think about changing the lever, they can do it right. So here you are advising New York State on this issue. What do you tell them to do?
Well, I think
have the governor look at it himself?
Unfortunately, New York, you're quite right. New York has a chance to do it right. There's a very good chance that they're going to do it really wrong. Because in New York, our touchscreens that we're looking at in New York are probably the worst of all possible worlds.
We don't have any in New York.
We're looking, but the State Board of Elections has already decided that, and this is beyond me. I do not understand why they made this decision, and I think they misread the law. But they decided that in New York, if we do buy touchscreen machines, we have to have every single candidate and every single race on the same screen. So we're not going to just have two.
We just heard that that's stupid.
It's not just stupid.
How do they make these decisions?
As I said, it's beyond me why they came to this decision, but they did. They read the law requiring it, and the law hasn't been changed. I think they misread the law, but in any case, if we do decide in New York to buy these, what are essentially monstrous computer screens. I mean, they're the size of refrigerators with every single candidate and every single race on them.
Goodness sakes.
We're going to lose. We're literally going to lose tens of, or maybe hundreds of thousands of votes every election.
Gee, that's a hell of a story. Now, who makes the decision on this? The state legislature?
Well, the state legislature punted basically to individual county boards of elections.
Have you talked to Spitzer?
Yes, we certainly have mentioned
to Spitzer.
We have mentioned to Spitzer's office and to state legislators that this either should be changed or that the state should just, and we've been advocating that the state buy optical scans where they're not going to have this problem.
Okay, so the touch screen have the problems that you're talking about. In your report, you are balanced. You don't believe your job is to recommend one or another.
That's right.
Okay. But the fact of the matter is, state by state, as these decisions are being remade after spending all that money, they are by and large going to the SAT, fill it out, optical scanner system, and leaving the touchscreen system behind. I'll just read what it says right here. Representative Rush Holt.
Yeah.
Congressman from New Jersey. He is introducing legislation in Congress which has bipartisan support, which will deal with some of the problems I suppose we're talking about. And it says here, Mr. Holt's bill would also substantially toughen the requirements for touch screen machines that have printers, and experts say this could even give more impetus to the shift toward optical scanning machines. Now, that what tells me is optical scanning machines are the politically, leave your report aside, politically look to me like the technology of the future.
That seems to be the wave right now. You know, a few years ago, the wave was everybody was going to touchscreen machines. Right. And that was, you talk to election officials, that they said that's where everybody's going. Right now, it's moving to optical scan. To me, I have to say, I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit removed from this fight. I care a little bit less about whether or not it's the touchscreen machine or the optical scan. What I care about is that the right procedures are in place. Let's look at Florida. They've now moved, at least in the polling place on Election Day in Florida, everybody's going to be voting on the optical scan, right? They're going to be filling out a piece of paper, and it's going to be read by this scanner, this computer. Yes. But the computer inside the scanner is still going to be tallying all the votes. And there is no law in Florida. There's no law in Florida that they check the computer with the paper records. So the paper records are there, they'll make people feel better, but they're not actually going to be used to make sure that there aren't programming errors, which we know happen. There is a lot of evidence that there have been programming errors, bugs, and even, you know, potentially, as we point out in the report, attacks against these systems and their software. The paper isn't being used to check that. And in fact, as far as I know, the law in Florida was, and I don't think it's going to be changed, that you can't actually hand count the paper. So you're not allowed to do it. So paper by itself.
Can't count the paper?
Yeah, you're not allowed to actually hand count the paper.
You got the SAT card and you can't count it?
Right. The most that you can do, as far as
can't you get these guys to do something right?
That's right. I'm trying.
I've never seen such a mess. But look, in your report, you say exactly as you said earlier, that you are more concerned about a program that will protect the public against both machines. Mm-hmm. It seems to me, however, when I look at the statistics that you have with respect to effective voting, effective technology, the way I read the report is that it tilts toward the optical scanning, the SAT. In other words, the statistics seem to be better for the SAT system than the optical scanning of the touchscreen system, which we saw at the beginning of the program. And perhaps that's why, you know, in the real world, it looks like people are going that direction. So bear with me just for a moment. What strikes me as an ordinary citizen is I don't want to fill out an SAT card. You know, I really don't want to fill out an SAT card. I've got to fill it out, which means, and I always put the, you know, that's what happened to me in SATs. And that's why I'm doing TV rather than being a congressman from New Jersey. You know, I was never sure I was putting the damn thing in the right place, number one. Number two, with the optical scanning or the SAT system, now as I understand it, I pick this card up, is that right? And I turn around and I have to walk someplace. Then I got to stick it in the machine.
Stick it in the machine, yeah.
But is this the digital age, or is this back to 1940 or 1950? Well, I don't understand it.
You're not alone in that reaction. I think that's why initially a lot of people went to the touchscreen machines, and I'm not sure that the numbers show that there are more problems with the touchscreen machines than the optical scan machines. There's plenty of evidence that there have been programming errors and bugs on the optical scan machines. Election officials will talk about the paper jams when you're putting in the paper. Right. And I certainly am sympathetic to the argument for especially in states where they already are using the touchscreen machines, that to have to switch to an entirely new system would be costly, it would be difficult on the voters, you'd have to re-educate everybody, you'd also have to re-educate poll workers in terms of using them. So as I said, I'm kind of agnostic on this question. What matters to me, though, is that you have the right procedures in place for whatever machine, and in particular, that there's some independent record, if it could just be a paper trail that voters are looking at, that you're using afterwards. One of the problems with the touchscreen machines, there are two problems with the touchscreen machines, even when they have a paper record. One is, and people will say there are more, but these are the two that are of most concern to me. One is if the machine goes down, the machine goes down, right? And we saw that happen in Maryland in this last election. We saw it happen elsewhere.
And also misses by 18,000, but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
That's another problem.
And when we look to the open of the show, you don't know which thing you hit, but anyway, go ahead.
But when the machine goes down, voters can't vote. And unfortunately, what we've seen in states is when this happens, they don't hand out paper ballots. So voters,
right.
I take off in the morning to go vote. I'm not necessarily going to be able to come back later when they tell me to go away.
Let me just cut you off a little bit and go to the larger question that I don't understand. We send a man to the moon. Why can't we build these voting machines that don't have the problems you just described?
Right.
You said there are two problems with touchscreen, and there's an inconvenience factor with respect to using the SAT system. Some states don't keep the cards. I mean, the whole thing sounds absolutely insane to me. Why can't we build a good voting machine if we can send a man to the moon?
Well, it's a good question. I think part of the reason is because we haven't really tried. Remember, again, we were using the same voting systems essentially in this. I mean, we used the lever machines in New York for 100 years. We're still using them.
I think we should still, after listening to you, I think I would vote for still using them.
I'm not sure. I don't think that's a good idea, but I can tell you why I don't think that's a good idea.
Go ahead.
But in 2000, we decided there was a problem, and there was a problem. And we, instead of spending a little bit of time doing some research, finding the right kinds of machines for replacement, we looked for the easiest answer. And there were these electronic machines. They already existed. They were available. We didn't spend any money on developing them. We had election officials, county election officials, making the decision about which systems to purchase. They weren't computer scientists. They were being assured by the vendors that these were great systems. They were perfect. And we made this shift in the United States where almost every single county in the United States now has a new machine in a period of less than 6 years, an entirely new system. So to me, it's not surprising that we have all these problems. It's also, I think part of it is that we haven't been using them that long. You know, you're going to have problems with a system that you're using for the first time.
I really can't accept that. I mean, it's like saying that we put the rocket ship up to the moon the first time and it didn't make it because we had problems, so we'll make it the second time. I can't accept that. How do you?
We didn't try to send a rocket ship to the moon without doing any research first, without doing any development, and we didn't do it in a period of just a couple of years.
Well, now we implicates, it seems to me, all of us, not just those of us in New York State or New Jersey, but the federal government. I don't know, because I'm not an expert on this, and you are, but don't we have to get the government in this somehow? And
I think we do. I think, you know, I have no problem with the federal government setting standards for these machines.
Getting some investment, getting
minimum
it done
requirement and investment. The federal government definitely needs to be spending more money on elections than it does.
Now, guess what? Excuse me for interrupting. We've come to the end.
Okay.
I mean, we could have done 3 programs on this.
Absolutely.
So, did Jeb Bush have it wrong, Larry Norden?
I think that the whole country had it wrong to a certain extent after 2000. Not entirely wrong. We understood that there was a problem, and we thought that there was a quick and easy fix with technology. And what I would say is Governor Bush got it partly wrong. A lot of us got it partly wrong. I don't want us to get it partly wrong again. And that means, again, not thinking that technology is going to provide all the answers.
I hate that answer. Technology provides all the answers, Larry Norden.
Thanks
very much, what the digital age is all about. Hey, thank you for coming by. And come by next week and learn more about the digital age. For the digital age, I am James Goodale. Good night.